Okay, so His Excellency Dr. Yasu has arrived as well, so that means we're all set. I'm sorry for the media if I'm cutting you off. I see you're interviewing Sol. Sorry about that. Time is of the essence. And if you remember, I don't know how many of you were here in the beginning, day one. Before I began anything, I said, if I, mess up any of the information, if I fall at the loss of words at times, or if I mispronounce anything, I said it's not easy to speak in front of people like this. And I asked you to be kind to me, so I just wanted to quickly mention that I was having difficulty pronouncing Deloitte. Deloitte, is it Deloitte? Deloitte. So the gentleman was saying, you know what, you're hammering me every time, so please let's give Deloitte our sponsor, a round of applause for me, please. But I always say, whenever you get a name, get an easier one. Like mine, Taye. You cannot confuse it. I'm sorry, but thank you so much for being our partner. So we're back in our session. What we're going to do now is, I think, Jordan will handle this again. We'll take your questions and concerns and comments, and then we will finally hear the way forward, correct? Jordan, the floor is yours.
Fantastic. Thank you. And welcome back, everyone. What I'm going to do is invite this group to ask a series of questions in a wave. We'll gather, say, 4 questions or so, and then we'll bring those back to our panelists, but then we'll go through another wave of questions again and ask for additional responses from the panelists. So with that, I would like to open up to the floor. This was meant to be a dialogue through the morning, and thanks to those who stuck around, we welcome the floor to questions. And maybe starting with Yasmi right up front. Thank you very much.
I don't need to stand. I think we're a very small group. Thank you. My name is Asrati Tafara. I'm the Executive Vice President of Yasmi, a satellite company based in Silver Spring, Maryland. First, to give a comment, this is my second time participating in the ICT Expo, and my colleagues from Kenya has been here, who traveled more than me in several ICT Expos in Africa. This was the largest and the best organized, so Your Excellency Minister, congratulations for the good leadership. I wanted to ask, I was a panelist in one of the health, in one of the education, so I'm not sure if it was raised, but if it was raised, I would like to hear from my other colleagues. The commitment from the Minister of ICT is clear. There is no question about that. But what I wanted to ask is, I think in the discussions, we discussed several times about regulatory framework, standardization, as some of the key factors to push or to realize what MCIT has been doing. My question to His Excellency Minister Debretsion is that there is practical impact from other stakeholders that may enable or detract what MCIT is doing. For example, these bodies might be, it could be a tax authority, it could be customs authority, especially in the service delivery part. Let me share one example how a simple policy change has impacted what we were doing last year. We did a pilot with the Ministry of Health, and Ministry of Health wanted to do a larger pilot. So we imported 150 tablets with a solar charger, and then we got in a day from MCIT, we get the clearance from MCIT and INSA in one day. So the tablets were out. The solar chargers were not. The solar charger was needed because we were going to remote places where there is no electricity. What was the policy change? The solar chargers we brought with 5-volt panels. We imported the same thing 6 months ago, but within that 6 months, the policy has changed, that Ethiopia should import only 15-volt panel. That's understandable. But since that policy was not communicated, by the way, today is July 2nd, those solar chargers still have not been cleared. They are in customs. So this impacts service delivery. So while the type of this ministry is so progressive, I think how this policy changes, how they can be communicated. And the customs people were not able to tell us who made this decision. Is it Science and is it Ministry of Science and Technology? Is it Standardization Agency? Where do we go? They don't have answers. Because they don't have answers, these items are still in the warehouse, and then we have to abandon them because we don't want to pay the storage charges, and they will be auctioned off anyway. So this is just a small example. It's a small policy change, The government has a reason why they changed it from 5 volt to 15 volt, but that whoever made that policy decision, that authority should be known to other ministries, to the public sector as well, so that people could go and address any issues. I think, how is the ministry thinking that all other impacting ministries or authorities could line up with what this progressive agenda the Minister of ICT is doing? Thank you.
Hi, thank you again for the opportunity. This is actually a comment and a clarification. Earlier, His Excellency clearly raised this comment on one of the collaboration books you had. In fact, there is no better ministry, if I'm to say this openly, than Ministry of ICT when it comes to private-public collaboration, because His Excellency explained about the quarterly meetings and the various meetings and the issues we have, specific agenda and which has been addressed. But again, what I would like to clarify is this particular document is a capture of the discussions on the various panels, and I can strongly suggest that it has to be very clear when we talk about which particular sector or which particular ministry is having this kind of issues. But there is no better example of having that collaboration than this particular expo we're in, because this is a progress from the past, and this is the 10th year, and this is a perfect example of private-public partnership, because our association is the facilitator of this event, and the ministry is the host, and we've been working tirelessly with all the stakeholders to bring this up. And I'm sure most of our members are here who are regularly attending and working on these specific issues on hardware, software, services, and sometimes cross-cutting issues on standards and stuff. So just to second His Excellency, we don't have any issue on that, and others where people could comment on different things at different panels, but ours is clear. So I just want to clear that. Thank you.
Thank you. A couple of observations. Again, my name is Gurmacho Admasi. I'm CEO of Fairfax Technologies. Congratulations on a very, very successful expo in every sense of the word, both the expo and the different panel discussions. 2 observations. You made in the common challenge areas, you made an observation that says something along the lines of undersupply of services, software. I believe the reverse is true. There's an oversupply of services. We actually confuse our customers. What I see, the shortage is in the IT management tower. The human capital shortage is reflected also in the management chain. There's so much turnover in IT management that there is not they cannot make an informed decision. From a low-end, entry-level, first-line IT manager through the chief information officer. That's a glaring gap over there. So it's not really a question of undersupply, it is oversupply. Established entities and fly-by-night outfits who actually work out of a suitcase. So that, I think MCIT can play a very constructive role in that space, because we don't want to have the IT industry, however young it is, I think the gentleman made, it's its infancy, absolutely it's in its infancy. We got to protect that industry, because if projects fail, the private sector is going to shy away investing a lot of capital in the IT. It's capital intensive. So I think MCIT can play a significant constructive role in that space. Second observation, along with the same thing, I guess I was part of the panel discussion in the private sector for challenges and opportunities. Technology is there. In fact, we're here. The fact we're entering the market later in the year, I think Amma made an observation in one of the panels, we can leapfrog. So we're here, we can take advantage of advanced technology from smartphone, you name it. What I see missing in Ethiopia is capital, human capital. I appreciate the gentleman sitting behind me who's doing a fantastic job Addis Ababa University for Center of Excellence, the focus is on the hard skills. In academic institutions in Ethiopia today, yes, we're going to churn out fantastic, bright students. What's missing is customer-facing role, the soft skills, basic communication skills, because we deal with international agencies, more so-called project management disciplines. Most projects fail because we don't have those disciplines. So with that, I'm urging again His Excellency, MCIT can I think, influence different academic institutions, not only to focus on and producing good, young, talented, very smart, seriously, very smart graduates, but also supplement that with needed soft skills, management, discipline, project management disciplines. Thank you.
Right. I'm going to try and focus a bit on the Digital Ethiopia conference. Over the last 4 days, I think it was fairly evident to see some new entrepreneurs in the symposiums. I think that was very encouraging for me, because from starting ICT ET 7 years back to where we are now, our biggest challenge, in my view, still is we've not been able to produce enough private sector ICT. Today, you know, we're talking about 45 million plus mobile subscribers in Ethiopia. The population there is more than the entire population of Kenya or Tanzania or any of some of our neighboring countries. The problem we have is we're not pushing decent content, whether it's in health, agri, education, digital finance. The 4 themes that we've been doing over the last 4 to 5 days, we're not pushing enough content for these individuals that have got, whether it's smartphones or even your basic handset. We need to find solutions in how we can push all the different contents that we've talked about the last 4 or 5 days. And I think to do that, there are certain challenges that I see. One is there's a lot of tactical solutions, you know, whether you go into the health sector, whether you go into the agri sector, there are tactical specific solutions, IVR, HMIS, interoperability. A lot of these solutions tend to be dispersed, nothing connected, and I feel we're not going to meet, or we're not going to benefit from all the infrastructure that we've actually invested on. If I look at digital finance, we have 45 million people out there with mobile phones. How many of them are getting digital payments today? How many of them can do that? We have 1,100 telecenters. How are we going to push content, whether it's agri process? I saw ATA the other day launch their own service centers. How can we collaborate with the telecenters to bring content to the small cooperatives locally? Agri, health, education. There's a lot of benefits that we can quickly jump on and push through. And I feel to actually make that happen, there's a private sector that could focus specifically on solutions to the individual. And then I think from a governance perspective, each ministry needs to set a clear guideline of what it needs from the private sector and what it wants to drive from the center. I think that collaboration is where I'm hoping we can push through this expo.
Fantastic. So perhaps to quickly summarize, we've heard a few questions and a comment, and we'll do another wave of questions momentarily. But we've heard I see a bit of pattern between the last 2 comments about it's not a matter of undersupply, there's a lot going on, how do we bring it together? As we just heard, this question of interoperability and how these efforts are coherent rather than dispersed, and getting past that fragmentation. There was an additional point made in the second to last comment about how we prepare the future human capital needed for this sector. And there are a few different facets to human capital. Yes? And so perspectives on human capital development in ICT. And then the very first question was about policy shifts. And how do we navigate when a shift in policy has side effects for ICT or otherwise? And those policy shifts are often made for great reason, but how do we navigate those side effects? Would you like to go first? Yeah.
Thank you for raising important issues that, of course, affect the sector, and it will also have a repercussion on others. I'm referring to the policy issues that he raised. So, the point is actually mainly about communication. There must not be a communication gap in one way. The other is, as you said, whether the decision made was appropriate or not. So without going into that, that's why I'm highlighting the communication, because they have already gone some steps within the government, to at least two institutions you mentioned, MCIT and INSA. But when you go to custom, it was completely different. So there is misalignment, and that's why I say it's communication gap. It should not happen, and we have to address such. So when there are such changes, it should be addressed now at all, within government as well as with the private sector. You should not be surprised when you go to another office that some of the directives were changed. So this should be addressed in the future, and we have to communicate among ourselves within the government, because once you start with some directive, it has to finish until the final, until you get the service. And if there is a change, the change must address all. You cannot simply see some changes somewhere and old way of providing service on another. So I think this is a misalignment issue with the government, and communication with the private sector is one of the issues that we have to address. This is anyway well taken. Partly I know the problem that has happened. This can be taken as a lesson, but this is just, as I said, one incident, but we have to take the lesson. We have to take the lesson out of it. It can create a lot of inconvenience in this regard. Regarding the private sector issue, of course, Tosium has complimented to what I said, although I have already addressed it, because private sector, in general, there must be a problem, but at least on this specific sector, there is no such issue. By the way, I also want to add, we were discussing at this break, the first PPP model was initiated by our ministry. The first PPP model, and actually the lesson we got was from India. That tour was organized by the World Bank. This unified billing, that unified three of the utilities for power, electricity, telecom, and water. Water is essential of the city of Addis, and the two are at the government, the federal level. But we brought all the utility into one center. And this was done by private sector. So this was an outlet, service provisioning of the government done by the private sector. Otherwise, ownership still is under government. I was mentioning earlier about services. This is for me just one. Hundreds and hundreds of services can be done, by the private sector. Even to our plan, we're having some targets, but we have not achieved. It didn't go much the way we want. So it's not just about discussion. We have a very concrete kind of service delivery done by the private sector, but still the companies are government. Telecom government, but KFIA, actually they are here in this, one of the sponsors, and they have their own show here. So we have linked government with private on SLS. It's a different kind of arrangement, even from the one we have seen in India, because that's a private service, and they are privately operated as well. Here, the operation is from government, but the service is being delivered by private, based on SLS and some payments as well within the per transaction. That's why I say we have to come with some different arrangement that is not common, in many other areas. So we just want to replicate and actually scale up such kind of engagement with the private sector within even the government kind sphere of services that can, because many services are still under government. Government should not do all from start to finish. In some of the segment of service delivery, private sector can fit in. Good for the private sector, good for the government, and good for the citizen, because they will get better service from that. So actually, there are three of them we say are winners. Government is winner because the citizen will be happy because of the service. The private sector is there. At the end of the day, they will get money. Of course, they have to provide service, but they are gaining. And the customer, not only good service, they save a lot of things, be it in finance, in convenience, many what we call good governance can be at least assured through different channels. So three of these actors are so the PPP is not about meeting. It's not about, feeling good spirit among ourselves, but there are concrete kind of engagement, and this should be replicated. So I'm linking this with the service issue. Partly, I agree this oversupply, not in all terms, In some specific areas, we might be oversupply. Actually, you can even see here, there are applications that are developed, same application by different companies. In this show, in this ICT Expo, it appears that it's oversupply from the point of the service that they are providing, the application that they have developed, say ARP. But I don't think we have to narrow down, by the way, to this type of, in general, it's not oversupply. It's undersupply, by the way, in general. Because services are not one or two, thousands. Thousands of services can be provided by the private sector. So I agree with the last comment, as you said. There is no, actually I also mentioned about the rural village. We are bringing users. That's not our, that should not have been our job, but there is no private sector to fill in. And it's very remote. So at least we took the initiative to incubate those youngsters. They are not employees. We are organizing them. Potentially there will be the private sector around, and they can, of course, move also elsewhere once they grow. But that service should not be provided again by the government. We are trying our best to create. But if there is private sector, why do we go into that type of intervention? But there is a different challenge. So in general, there is a big gap. It's under as I said, it's under, we have, in terms of service, we are nowhere, you have to say. From the private sector, we are nowhere. We are nowhere. Still, it is in very infant stage, very infant. So it's not oversupply. So this will mislead us, as I said, but in very specific areas, there might be, I agree on your observation in that regard. But let's not generalize the conclusion on the, but we have to be cautious, as you said, in some areas. And that is, again, about management. That's also a good point. That can be addressed. People can specialize in some areas rather than repeating what your neighbor or others have done. You can come with some specialization. There are many specializations that we have not addressed at all. In fact, even we have not even thought about that. So we have to be cautious in regard of generalizing. Otherwise, as observation, it's correct. There are some that appear, I would say, that appear oversupply, but that can be shaped by shaping some of the products and services. On the private sector development, by that is a real challenge, in general. So that is what we have to work on. That's a real challenge, and from MCIT side, we are developing, by the way, private sector development strategy, specifically on ICT. We will discuss it in our, well, when time comes, when it reaches some level, but we say that should be an agenda. It should not be left, just for the private sector. The government has to do its own work as well, the facilitation in arrangement. We are not going to discuss only on some specific problems, no. Let's see the whole sector. So let's have a clear strategy on ICT, not on the general. We have a general strategy on private sector, but specifically we have to have a special strategy for ICT private sector. That is what we have on our yearly plan, and we are working on it. So that is an agenda that we have. And private sector is many. It's not just service or hardware, as I mentioned, software. Even within hardware, software, you can come with thousands of varieties. So this is something that it's works that we have. One, it's an infant stage. Second, we have to work, and of course, in tandem with your own actually aspirations and thoughts. But the government has to come also with its own initiative, because, as I said, we are interventionist government, and we have a lot of projects, a lot of ideas, visions, and projects in the future. It should be in line with the private sector as well. Otherwise, it cannot go by isolation, by isolating the local, or even just by engaging FDI or foreign company. We need the local capacity to be developed. Otherwise, there is no development without the local private sector. So we have a big challenge on the private sector development, and I think partly we can address from the four pillars that we have seen here, from finance, from education, from agriculture, and then the health. But the private sector development strategy encompasses many. But for us, we have to focus again with the way forward. I think we have to have this area of one as a challenge. How do we develop the private sector intervention on all these four areas? How do we develop? What are the current capacities? What are the gaps? Within the specific area, the private sector development definitely has to be addressed. And the human issues that he raised, yes, I raised from the rural community, or like I said, digital literacy issue, but it's more than that, as you said. That is from usage point of view. Otherwise, the HRD issue on the sector, we have many extremes we can see now. There are illiterates, and there are young users that work on robots. You can even see in this under this roof. We have extremes. Our users are working on robots. We have seen, but there are a lot of illiterates who doesn't know anything. So the continuum is so broad. We have to address this issue of human and their expertise in many areas. There are many areas. There are many specializations. So HRD in general is again a challenge that we have to address. But again, we have to come to the four pillars: health, education. So let's see the human capacity issues within this, with the user, with the developer, with the manager, or with the sector. I think we have all those challenges have to come into, we can incorporate on our future action plans regarding these four. Otherwise, broadly, yes, human talent is also a challenge, but let's address all the continuum, from the illiterate to the special experts we are looking for. Thank you.
In fact, it was not raised, but let me brief the latecomer advantage, what you said. I was in Netherlands now, and one of the issues that we were seeing is ICT in agriculture. And before also we were in Israel, and it's incredible basically. So we can use the latecomer advantage to transform the agriculture, by the way. That is a very important element. Therefore, we are on the way to develop strategy, on ICT strategy. By the way, we have institutions, we have departments, we have experts also. By the way, it's a little bit different that we have. They are highly paid and they are okay. Turnover is, at least, is good in ICT because we need them and they won't survive also. Therefore, but we need we have two problems in agricultural transformation. One is the human capacity element, as you said. Second is the technology. So without those things, we cannot transform the agriculture. It's still a subsistence agriculture that we have. Therefore, we want to appeal you. That's why I came here today. So We are on the way to process, by the way, with the ATA, we have a strong team that we want to develop a strategy. We are on the way to develop a strategy of ICT, how we can come up within a short possible time to transform the ICT in agriculture, by the way. If you heard, there are, in research also, there are an attempt there to make it an agri-networking with different, research institutions to come up with a very nice data and vibrant data. And also, there are also smart tablets that we have already started to get data, fresh data from the meteorological forecasting. Anyway, there are a lot of issues that we want to address. So we need you, by the way. That's why I came today, to appeal you and to come to my office to discuss with the whole task forces on the ICT group. We have a task force already established. And we have also a platform, by the way. We are a little bit ahead. Therefore, thanks to the minister, that's why we push us. So even though it's in fact, but there is a green light. So let me address you. Maybe you can raise some issues from tomorrow morning. We can arrange a meeting, all of you, those who want to address, by the way, specialization on agriculture. I have seen they don't repeat one innovation never repeated by another person. So specialization on agriculture. That's what we need, basically. Therefore, we need you. Then the ministry is open for you. And we have a platform already and also task forces. So we need your inputs, basically. Had it been I was here, by the way, there was my scholars also to get some idea and an issue they have already in it. So please, before you went out, to you get back home, so we need to come to office so that you can advise us how we can move forward on ICT for agriculture. This is what I want to tell.
Well, I think both Dr. Debretsion and Dr. Yasso have answered most of it. Maybe just to Amaha's last point, because I think it is important that somehow one is, we do need that for agriculture. We have to have a strategy. For instance, we at ATA, we think together with the ministry to actually pioneer a platform, but even we ourselves are feeling that if we don't somehow tie it around a strategy that adds up to certain objectives and goals, you just end up having others come in and do a lot of replication. But the other is also maybe institutional setup of different institutions. So for instance, at ATA we have an ICT for Ag team. It's all it does is basically work on ICT issues as it relates to agriculture. And sometimes the challenge we have when we engage, and then the ministry also have a team, but when we engage with other ministries, we've realized actually we don't have a touch point, so we have to kind of figure out how to collaborate because that touch point doesn't exist. And given the importance of ICT for the different sectors, maybe the institutional setup itself could reflect that type of setup. So for instance, with the Ministry of Trade, because we work on market information system, there is now an ICT for markets team that's been established. So I think to the extent that these type of touch points currently don't exist, maybe it's also making sure that they exist. And then the last thing I would say is we also have to recognize that it is a very intense engagement. We shouldn't undermine or underestimate what it takes to come up with something when 2 or 3 ministries are involved. It is a very intense engagement, and it does take a lot of time. So sometimes why certain things may not be happening or why collaboration may not seem to be happening is because there's already a lot of work going on the background in terms of collaboration on specific areas. But because the engagement can be intense sometimes, it does take a bit of time. So I don't think we should underestimate the intensity of that.
Sure, great. I think just a few additional reflections. The one on the comment about this dynamic between undersupply and oversupply, very much agree that it's this question of it depends, and let's get much more nuanced about what we're seeing. Particularly in this space of technology for development, we've seen a mix of solutions in, let's say, the education space, the agriculture space, the health space. And when I look across the continent and globally, about 10 years ago, I'll take healthcare. there was just a proliferation of mobile for health in endless bounds of examples that were out there. Yet nothing was moving past that early pilot phase. So you just had hundreds, if not thousands, of these solutions coming up, but nothing was actually getting to a point where it was starting to scale. I see that similarly now in education as well, where we're seeing lots of exciting ideas, but they're not necessarily getting to a point of growth. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because I think it's important to understand why that's happening. And there are a number of dynamics that go well beyond any sort of capital investment or financing, although we do often talk about the financing piece. But a lot of it does have to do with some of the more either technical or business understanding, and that could be having a nuanced understanding of a market and recognizing that if you've built your solution in Addis, it's probably not going to be exactly as relevant in all parts of the country. So if you want to move from serving Addis to building a national solution, you probably need better information about the communities, the villages. What is the role of the village centers in being partners or other aspects? In other cases, it's understanding what it takes to, as a young company, build a business model that could be to help you to grow and to scale. Again, if I take the education example, more often than not, these solutions being built for public education systems means that your primary customer, if you will be government. But the decisions that government has to make when you're investing in the next solution for technology is, I need something that's going to not only be relevant for my entire country, but also something that is going to be proven and demonstrate an impact on health outcomes. The ability for young early companies to prove that impact, if it's health outcomes, if it's education outcomes, is actually quite expensive. And so is there enough capability to actually do that? And that's where I've seen some interesting models where partnerships with, in some cases, donors, in some cases, government, or in some cases, universities, helps to better understand what are the things that are holding back some of those solutions. And in other cases, the oversupply is actually a good thing, because it means that there are a lot of ideas churning. Hopefully we're seeing this notion of things being tried and tested and failing early, and then learning from those examples. The challenge becomes when it's not happening and there's fragmentation, and you have six companies that are, or solutions that are trying to do the same thing in different places. So I think that's an interesting dynamic to dig into further. And then the other observation or reflection I wanted to have is there was a comment made about the human capital dimension. And this is one where there are so many different aspects to it, and I think that was mentioned, that in technology it often starts with, we need more developers. And that's a very basic assumption, but developers certainly are needed. And so we see some interesting ideas about not only today's developers and software engineers, but what is the next generation, and starting to see the introduction of things like coding into an educational system, preparing for the future. But beyond that, a point that was made that I would absolutely reinforce is that often, going back to the growth of companies, it's not just the developer capability, but it's the management capability and the management capacity. And it is the soft skills. And the layer I'd add on top of that is what I like to call the hybrid technologists. So you often see the technologists over here, the teachers over here, or the health professionals over here, and the ability to have that conversation about what are your needs, are we solving your needs, and what are the technological solutions available, particularly in an environment where it has a very strong, as you're mentioning, infrastructure and base to start. I think those conversations are critically important and reflects the need for capacity and human capital at a variety of spaces. So I'll pause there, just those two additional reflections I thought might be.
Thank you. And we'll take another wave of questions, and I see hands already shooting up. Fantastic. So we'll do it, and let's be, I would ask to please be pithy in your comment or question, and then we can gather a few more this round as we run through. Why don't we start with Munir, and then we'll circle around to the right. The microphone is coming. Huh?
Thank you very much for the chance. I have two comments and one reflection. I think before I start that, I think it was a very successful event, both from an expo perspective and a conference perspective. So I would like to congratulate and join others to congratulate MCIT and the organizing team. In terms of my first comment, I would like to see from Dalberg perspective that sign to include a gear of the private sector, because there it says government of Ethiopia, and it's the stated objective of the government to enable the private sector, especially as part of GTB2. And I believe that the development partner's role is either catalytic or funding. So I think we should not forget the most important part of the three or of the two gears. My second reflection is we need to be careful in using anecdotes. Anecdotes such as mobile payments and things that have been, for example, GSMA, which is a very-respected association of mobile operators. Last year's publishment has stated that there are about 105 mobile money or mobile payment initiatives across the globe. 15 go to this first year, and only 5 remain after the first year. So we need to really think about local context. What is required locally? What is the demand and the need of the local economy within the context of policy? My reflection is that the culmination of this event, in many ways, is, I think, should be looking forward. And it should look forward based on the current investments that have been made over the past 10 years in this country. And those are heavy investments in power, telecom, road, education, and health. If you look at each sector and what it has done in the economy and trying to connect it to digital is where I think this conference should take us forward to. Whether it's the telecom sector that has enabled 90–95% coverage across the country, though with some challenges around the quality of service, it has given the potential of reach, or what has been defined as 45 million subscribers. It has given us the potential of a market. Or whether it's in the power, which has lit homes, which gives them basic economic freedom, or road and the transport network, which has connected people and markets. And without markets, very little can be done. Or whether it is the agriculture sector, which is being transformed from the smallholder to commercial. That is giving us a lot of potential. And the cross-cutting sector of education. So this is what I think needs to be looked at in thinking about the digital economy or the digital Ethiopia potential. So if we look at that, digital becomes a cross-cutting enabler and itself an economy by itself. I think on the opening date, His Excellency has remarked that for us, ICT plays not only a major part, but it's also the only way in a country of 100 million people living across 1.1 million square kilometer, the only way we can reach, whether it is the citizens from a government perspective or the market from a private sector perspective, digital can only be the only means to reach this. And reaching means driving usage, whether it's in the areas of the provisioning of education, whether it's creating digital content, or the transmission of that content digitally, or whether it is access to health, whether it's the mobile doctors, or the delivery of medicine, or diagnostic through mobile technology, or whether it is financial services, and the promise it holds, whether it is enabling credit, as we have seen earlier on by the Ministry of Agriculture, that 3.8 million quintals has been transferred through e-vouchers, or the promise of protecting those smallholder farmers from an insurance perspective, because if they produce and if they are not insured, that economy does not function. Or the ICT innovation centers that are being built across the country. I think the aim is 15 million. Those are delivery centers, and they can deliver multiple services. So what we see And as demonstrated in countries that have developed a comprehensive framework, there is significant development dividends to be paid. If you see GTP1, the government's commitment has yielded some economic gains, 10%, 12%, whoever we believe. My reflection would be, perhaps it is time that an extraction is made from GTP2 to develop a digital Ethiopia strategy framework, to leverage what has been done to date, and create a roadmap to enable all stakeholders, the private sector, development partners, internal or external, through the leadership of the government, to enable us develop this sector in moving an infant private sector to a very vibrant private sector to meet and grow the needs and the demands of the consumers and the economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Munir. Great. Well, yes, continue to the right. I will just note that I know Munir knows very well that the private sector is a development partner. But please, yeah.
Actually, I want to start a story with your name is Jason or?
Jordan. Yeah.
Jordan. So what happened earlier with your comment about the public and private partnership reminds me of a childhood story. There was a lady called Tia Maria, and we lived in Tanzania. She came over to our family home. My parents weren't there. My younger sister, who was, let's just say, naughty, caused a little bit of problem and misbehaved. And I just stood there doing nothing. But when my parents came home, they had heard about the situation. And they took out the belt, not just for her, but for me. In other words, my point to that story is, I consider these your comments, not mine. So I think you missed the earlier incident. Levy is me. You may have heard that name earlier. So that's just one story. I think it's your opinion. You're entitled to it, just like my sister. It was her opinion. She was entitled to it. But those opinions I do not share. I just want to be clarified. But I do want to mention a couple of things from this event. I think in any event when somebody participates, you learn something. And I think from this one, some of these things I learned were reminders. One, I think the gentleman over there talked about exponential versus linear. And I think it's a good point. It's a good reminder. Whatever we do, is it exponential? Are they linear? Our policies, everything else we do. I think it's a very fair point to start asking that question for whatever we do. The other thing was what Mirav said, even though it was not so nice. It was true. He said ICT is a solution, but not the solution. It's a good point. We can't assume that we are the solution to everything, and I think that was very fair. The other thing, the third one I took was the definition of private sector. I think it really, especially yesterday with the youth, it was a good point. You know, the definition of private sector should just not be PLCs. We really have to do more as an association to capture these new guys, especially the youth. So I think the scope of what we consider a private sector must be redefined by us as an association as well. And it's not just Addis Ababa. We need to start going more rural. So I think that part was, I think, something that made me say, huh. The fourth one, which I think from this event became clear to me also, is that it is the time for services. You know, as a guy who's from the hardware sector, we always thought we were it, okay? And we really did. We were it for a while. But that has changed. That has really changed. Now, it's just like any other country, as we all know. You know, I keep saying Microsoft came after HP and IBM. So it is the time for services. And I think it's a good time, and it fits also with the definition of what the private sector should be. So my question would be, for those who participated during this week, including the Honorable Minister, Miraf, and others, what were yours? I'm quite curious to see. Just short takeaways of what you learned from this particular expo. Thank you.
Your Excellencies, first, I'd like to take this opportunity to express my impression, my appreciation for this expo. Organizers, I really want to thank. Some of us in the U.S. been working with the organizing committee, and if you ask me, I was really nervous, and what I've seen is fantastic. I'm really proud, and I hope friends in the U.S. who are watching this or who will be able to see this would join us next year for even more successful expo. Your Excellency, the conversation around use versus infrastructure is a very interesting and a very envious position to be for many African countries. So I'd like to take this issue, question of use, in the context of the two dimensions of ICT. ICT as an economic sector and ICT as enabler. As an economic sector, what all of us would like to see is to see Ethiopia be the next destination for the global IT-enabled business and services. However, Your Excellencies, that requires knowledge and network. I think we have a very good opportunity. We have an underutilized resource overseas, especially in the US, that could contribute to this. And I would like to hear from both of your ministries, what kind of focused engagement do you have? What message do you want to send to our friends in the US who are in a very high position, both in experience, in knowledge, and even in the resources? So that, I think, could be a very good catalyst that could help Ethiopia be like Morocco or Ghana or Ukraine or Philippines, whatever, a destination for global IT services. Second point comment I want to make is IT as an enabler. Now that we have 40 million or over 40 million mobile phone users, and we have this expansive IT infrastructure in almost every corner of the country, then the challenge is how do we pivot this 40 million mobile users from voice telephony towards data use, to be digital data consumers. And also, I really want to challenge the private sector and academia in here. You see, instead of this fancy talk about iPad or smartphone, whatever, how can we get small businesses in Ethiopia, shop owners or restaurants, how can we make them use computing for example, inventory control, for payroll, for the mundane automation, what we call automation of processes. So really the focus, unfortunately, in many African countries is about the fancy, the gadgets and the social media and the web. I think information technology is beyond that. I think automation is beyond that. So how do we create this culture so that all our small businesses, stores can use computing? That by itself creates a lot of opportunities for the private sector. So here the challenge, I think, not only for the ministry, but for the private sector is how can we get into that market? How can we create this knowledge? What are the barriers? Is it literacy, digital literacy, or is it access to hardware, or is it localization is an issue? So we need to conduct our own research and then pursue that market. Because at the end of the day, unless we create that market, we're going to face with this talent flight. We have to retain the talent here in Ethiopia. The only way we can grow the ICT market, the ICT technology, is when we retain talent within Ethiopia. I see many hundreds of my colleagues, my friends from Ethiopia now moving to the US. I'd like to see that reversed, and the only way we can do that is by strengthening the ICT sector. Thank you.
Great. Let's pass to Mahadur on the
Give
back.
me a minute, please.
Ooh, yeah.
It looks like we have so many questions,
Yeah.
so we need to come back to you to make sure whether we can take them, and then we have to number them.
We have just we had 3 so far. Let's take.
Look at all these ends. So we have to give them numbers, and we have to ask our guest of honors if we can take these questions or if they have to go. We need to make sure they can stay.
Yes, we are conscious of time. Yeah.
So give them numbers, please. Give them numbers like 1, 2, 3 if they say okay.
Terrific. So
number them for me.
Okay, we've had 3, so number 4, that's Mahadir, and then number 5 in the very back on this side, yes? Okay, and that sounds good.
Number 4?
Good morning. Thank you. My name is Mahadar Gabramadin. I came from a construction sector. I am an architect by profession. I have appreciation, concern, and question. I have attended almost all the ICT expos in the past, and they were more on selling mobiles and very closed forums, but now this is a quantum leap or exponential leap that I see with all the discussions and also the details that was put into the whole process. I hope other sectors will learn from this process. My concern is that from the report that I see and also from the other discussion that I have participated in, from the digital finance and agricultural transformation, health and e-learning, I see a very steady growth, and there are different solutions that are being provided. My concern will be when these sectors grow, we might leave other sectors in the back, and in the future, in the coming future, 5 to 10 years, we might see gaps in other sectors that we should really be concerned, because now we see the results that we can learn from these processes and we can adapt them into other sectors. For example, what we've seen, what ET has done on the ICT line, I have seen in other forums what the interventions and the prompt decision that officials and also people in the ministry could do, and I really appreciate that. My questions are 2. 1, how can we create the digital culture? I think the digital culture needs to be addressed in different ways, because we cannot have one-leg development that if we don't have the culture, if other disciplines and sectors don't follow this path, we will really create a gap. But through industrialization, through urbanization, through the road infrastructures, in the coming years, Ethiopia is going to be urban. Urbanization is a big concern with global push, local needs, and infrastructure and literacy. So I was wondering, maybe this question would go to the ministry. I was wondering when this shift is going to come. When are we going to have that urban focus? Because eventually we are going there. So what is the policy on the ICT area towards the urbanization and related governance and other related cases? Thank you.
To the gentleman in the very back, and then to a comment from the Ministry of Education.
Who's next?
Yeah. Sorry, no, on the left. On the very back. Yes, no, yeah, that's right.
So I'd like to go back to, I think, a very fundamental question that Ato Gramacho raised from Fairfax Technologies. First, let me introduce myself. My name is Theodros, and I'm the Director of ICT Center of Excellence. What I would like to address is really the question of having the human resources at the management level, both on the business side as well as IT side, to really make everything work. As you understand ITIL, there's really the whole of service management is based on the idea that businesses sit down with an understanding of what the business's needs are, and IT presents some solutions. And then businesses have to understand to some extent, to really a good extent, whether the solutions will work for them or not. I see a big gap in terms of the IT management, both from the business side to where the businesses have a role of managing whether IT is producing what they've asked for. I see a gap there, so IT basically is the implementer and the manager, the evaluator of the solution. And I don't think it will work that way. There is a need for business to understand what the needs are and really be able to manage, project manage, as well as really evaluate, are they delivering what the needs are, our needs are, and hold their feet to the fire. Without it, I don't think the adaptation of ICT to where we are able to harness the power ICT offers will happen. Because if you are the judge and the implementer, I don't think things work out. I think there's a big need for management, even within the IT, going back to the IT structure, is we have developers, strong developers, but there's really managers who need to be very strong project managers. Evaluate, are the features, are the benefits that were promised being delivered? And then further really go back to the businesses and explain to them how they're delivering it, so that they can be an understanding between the businesses who have some needs and the IT section was delivering against those needs. So I think that's a big hole that needs to be happen. I think we need more system analysts and various levels of IT management to really be able to drive it, because software developers alone cannot do it.
Fantastic. We'll have the one last question or comment from the gentleman from Ministry of Education here, and then we'll pass back to our panelists. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. My name is Alalam from Minister of Education, Director for Ethernet. I would like to just comment some of the idea raised by the participants regarding on the digital literacy and the human capital ICT development in Ethiopia. Actually, we have been doing a lot on this regard. We have started so many initiatives from the Minister of Education side on the higher education sectors. So we have a flagship program, we call it the University Industry Linkage on ICT. We have been signing an agreement with Oracle, for example, to have an Oracle Academy and Oracle Workforce Development Program to be opened up in all the university, so that we have been providing by integrating with the curriculum, some of them, and some of them we have been providing as an independent certificate for the graduates. We have been also collaborating with Microsoft. We are signing an agreement with Microsoft to narrow the digital literacy. Actually, we have been providing for students, teachers, and researchers so many skill courses on the ICT digital literacy, so that the university community also providing the courses for their communities around the area, for the government, high schools, and TVETs. We have also collaborating with others providers like IBM. We are also signing an agreement with Huawei, Cisco to open up an academy, University ICT Industry Engage, so that the graduates will have a skill when they are graduating from the university. This is one of the areas that we have been doing. So for the future, even we are also planning to collaborate with other private sectors to work together to enhance the skill of the ICT graduates. We were very happy on the panel discussion, by the way. We were one of the participants on the panel, so we have been learning a lot from this ICT Expo. So we have taken a lot of lesson to be addressed from our side to make it digital educations. Regarding on the policy, we have to change our policy, the strategy to go digital. We have to have an incentive mechanism for teachers who will develop the contents also. So we have to also work with the local private companies to develop on so many areas on education sector. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you very much. I might then turn back to our panelists for reactions to comments and questions that were made, and just to reverse the order for a change, I might ask if Ato Maraf would like to go first, and then His Excellency Dr. Abitzion, if you have the final call.
Sure, I think to be honest, there are probably more comments than questions, so I think we'll have to take the comments as they are. Also delighted to see that Ato Gruma took out the belt on Levy. But I think his point, I hope, Jordan, I think you've captured. I think in terms of things like retention of talent and so forth, look, I mean, I think talent is a major issue in all sectors. We face it in agriculture, not ICT. So the question of how do you retain talent is the big elephant in the room, particularly for the public sector. I think increasingly maybe the private sector also is going through that. I mean, at the end of the day, of course, pay is one critical issue. I think we have to recognize on the public sector side that has fiscal implications, so we can't, we're always limited in that sense. But I think to the extent that when it comes to ICT. The growth of the private sector or the growth of the ICT, the private sector engaged in ICT means more opportunities for retaining talent within Ethiopia. But I think to your point, one of the things that Ethiopia may have an advantage is on growing the professional services, because professional services in IT or ICT is an opportunity for exporters, where you can actually export professional services without necessarily exporting the individuals. And I think we could be a major player in this part of the region if we develop, I think, our talent in the IT/ICT sector. And I think that is something that could be thought of as a strategy. I think, certainly MCIT's push, even including the ICT park and so forth, is towards that advantage. But I do think we need to think about, we should seriously think about commoditizing professional services, because it's a big opportunity for Ethiopia. Again, I don't think there was any specific question directed to at least to the ag sector, so I'm going to pass on the microphone for summary.
Okay, and so many important comments were made. I don't want to again to go to the details, but I will try to put them into categories. One is the general issues have been raised, and very specific on the private sector also were commented. So I grouped them into two, and then finally to say the way forward. I will put it. We have not much time, so I would like to add my ideas as well on the way forward. Regarding the gap that may happen, like I said, for other sectors, I just want to let you know that although we are focusing for this, for the purpose of ICT Expo on 4, we are not saying we'll make Ethiopia digital by these 4 sectors, no. Actually, we have one ICT policy that governs all sectors, be it rural, urban, and many other areas linked to it. So we have a higher platform, and based on that, we have many other strategies as well. And for 2020, we have this what you call a government strategy has been developed. It addresses all sectors, all. But when we say all, we are not going to digitize all, but they will not remain behind. We will do very specific areas. For example, starting from infrastructure, they will have all network and some services in the form of electronics. But we are not going to digitize the whole thing. So they will be on board based on the priority we have. Otherwise, there will not be any sector left behind in terms of inclusion. But this is a special focus: health, education. They are common denominator for everyone, not just, we are not looking at them as just one sector. Health is not just one sector, although there is one ministry. It addresses the whole, urban, rural, and the whole population. Health is actually even personal agenda. It's our concern. So those sectors definitely have a lot of impact on the digitizing Ethiopia. So the name sectoral does not apply actually into these areas. Although they appear to be sectoral, in real terms, they are common denominators for not for only sector, but for each of us. So we are trying to combine both. As I said, there will be a common for all, and then very specific because we go on priorities and based on, of course, on the impact they have on digitizing. These are high impact. The finance sector, it impacts everyone. All sector, every individual. So these are picked, by purpose. By purpose. They will have a very great impact. If we make a big change here, we will make a big change on the national. Even the other sectors will be included when I address finance and the other specifics. So I think we have to understand, but we have a strategy, as you said. It is, by the way, very important point that you have raised, but this is a perspective we have when we focus on these four. Otherwise, we are not going to abandon the others, and they will be within the loop. But it is about the intensity and the work that we do, that make a difference. Otherwise, they will be within the loop of this digital work. Other points where I'm starting with this because the other points raised also can be put into this one. By the way, Munir also said it was digital Ethiopia and the strategy. That's what we meant, on this e-government strategy about digitizing. It's about digitizing, about all sectors. But we didn't say it's digital Ethiopia strategy. It's just the naming. Otherwise, it's about electronic strategy. It's electronic strategy. And it encompasses, as I said, all areas. So that is a basic one. The digital roadmap is the basic one. We have one, but it is time-bound. But digital Ethiopia cannot be time-bounded. But we have to work on timeline. That's why we are focusing until 2020. This is what we call GTP2. Because we have this development program. So within the development program, we have this 2020 e-government strategy, but it goes beyond when we talk about e-government. So we have to develop as well, the strategies that we need beyond 2020. In that sense, it's relevant. But until 2020, we have a roadmap that can cover all the areas. But we still, as I said, we need some detailed work on these areas. About digital inclusion, actually, have included. We have already strategy that we have developed. It's not only just for 2020. It go beyond. But operationalizing the strategy is a big challenge, even within the frame of 2020. So that's why we need to go to the details. So we have already some strategies that have been already addressed, but operationalizing the strategies is a big challenge. Operation is not just writing, it's not about developing a document. That's a guide, that's a basic, but how do you bring it to the ground? That's operationalizing, and this is what we are looking for from this discussion and beyond. This market issue, for me, it's again part of this one. We are not going to address, in fragmented form. When we talk about e-government services, market will also be there. Market will be also, private sector will also be there. Government will also be there. And the different actors will come. Well, the different actors will come. So those issues that were raised, but they can be incorporated. The digital culture is a very important issue. At the end of the day, it's about usage, we said, and usage goes to with your awareness, and the trust you have, within the system. And of course, there must be those systems developed first, but at least if there is no culture, then people can abandon. Whatever you do, they will not take it. So that will be a waste. That will be a waste. So that is very critical. So that's why I also raised earlier, let's start also with digital literacy. But it goes to high level expertise as well. So the point of digital literacy was for awareness. And through time, it will be culture. Through time, through exercise, it will be culture. So it's about exposure and time. Otherwise, you have to start with awareness, with just knowledge. And then if they can come up after exercises, that culture. So that is very important. That is very important. And by the way, we are mixing in terms of this ICT usage. You have to mix all channels. All channels. We should not expect each and every one of us, in terms of population, will use, the mobile application. No. Most may be. Yeah, the youngsters and others educated, they may use. Others, they may be indifferent. So you have to have some centers on the ground where they can walk in and get service. So we have to have different channels until this digital culture will develop. So it will take its own course, but to increase the usage, you have to have many channels. You have to have many different, the private sector, that's why I was mentioning about service, the private sector. The private sector can provide for those people who are not, who doesn't have any comfort with using these gadgets. But they have to be served by the centers, which are digital by their own. So we have to mix the use. I was mentioning about the rural village. That's one outlet. One outlet. So we can innovate on the different channels. But side by side, this culture must also be developed. Otherwise, we cannot wait until we have this digital culture overwhelmingly in all. No, it will take us so long. And in some cases, you may not even achieve it in some segment of the population, maybe elders or others for any reason, So I think we have to mix, we have to come with, again, with strategies that can fit to our purpose, and these are one of the thoughts we can include. The other area I want to talk about is the private participation. On the solution, although it is listed under government, also with some donors, but as he said, private sector by its own is an actor, so we have to put it by its own right. So it's not only government and donor, but the private sector is also there, and the private sector, I also accept the comment and the remark forwarded by Levi. The private sector is not, that means that the person who is rich or has some capacity, no. As I said, it has to be, of course, we are not here to redefine what private sector is, but it should, as I said, include, the uses and what you call this micro and small enterprise. Again, private sector is, you see it in continuum. There are high level and there are just entry points. So I think, although as I said, we cannot define, but as I said, it has to encompass, those entrants, new entrants, those incumbents, as I said. And we have to, actually, we have agreed last time in our discussion that we have to have a platform also for them. Again, actually, one area that we have to address, within the private sector platform. Those entrants, those incumbents must be incorporated. That we have decided last time, and I think we have to develop that one. Otherwise, we should not leave them aside and then discuss on those who have companies or have some employees. But let's start, as you said. So it should incorporate them. Should not put them aside. I think we have agreed last time, but we didn't redefine. And as I said, we are not going to redefine, but the point of concern you raised is very important. Maximization infrastructure usage, that's what I said earlier. We were talking about over 40 million, but it is now 53, 54 million mobile users. The number of mobile users is increasing, but where is the service? The service is not increasing. We were mentioning this undersupply. The usage is going up, it's shooting. How about the service? There is no, let alone shooting, we cannot even count on the number of services that you can get on this application. That's why we say there is undersupply. The infrastructure is there. In fact, we have even broadband infrastructure in the rural, this 3G. It's not only 2G, but even 2G you can use, this text, SMS, you can provide service. 2G is 85% of the coverage. 85% of geography of the country is covered by 2G. And most of them are 3G. That's why I say there is infrastructure, but we are using it for just voice or some other internet connection, that's it. You don't see meaningful services on the handset that can impact the life or even inform the day-to-day routine of the farmer and the village people. So that's why I say there is a big lag, big gap on undersupply. So this is for the private sector. Maximization is appropriate, as you mentioned. And again, we have to discuss further on how to maximize. But we can start again with these four: financing, education, agriculture. How to maximize? How do the number of services that we can develop? It will be shared, of course, for the private sector, but let's come with those details. Although we have some ideas, we can further develop. Diaspora, obviously. That's why you are here. We need to bring diaspora. So you cannot be a spectator. You have your own expertise, you have your competence. We need you. We need you to be back here. Not just for a few days or few months visit, you know. No. We want you to be here, stationed. Because you have your own competence, you can make a difference. So we need, the government is committed, but of course we have to work out the details, as you said, and we need also your commitment. But we have no doubt that you can make a difference, no question about that. You have to develop not just education, your own competence. So we need it to make Ethiopia digital. You are one of the factors that make a difference. So let's work the details again. It's about engagement, By the way, we have to include on the way forward, one of the ideas I have is diaspora must be included in the details. Private sector, yes, but diaspora by its own, this is another area of concern. By its own, it can be a private sector, but it has its own special requirements, and arrangements. So let's treat diaspora as by its own in developing these challenges we have. So this is well taken, but we have to discuss. So diaspora must, that's why we have addressed diasporas to come here at this expo. Unlike the previous exhibitions, we need their input. We need input and we need real engagement with the diaspora. Not just symbolic things, but real engagement that makes some difference, as you were mentioning. So within the private sector, this must be also included, and we are happy to see you, by the way, here, and we really appreciate also your contribution. The success of the expo is also your own success. It's because of your contribution that that this was a different, platform than the previous one. That's one of the value addition that we have seen. You are one of the differentiators, by the way, of this expo. So I recognize that, but let's go beyond expo. Let's go to the real subject matter of digital Ethiopia. But this is a good start, and we really appreciate the initiatives that you have taken, not only for expo, but I also know the other concerns you also raised. So diaspora must be part of this way forward. And finally, the tax issue, I have been questioned, not by you, but by university students. I have got a letter, and they were asking me about, fair tax, on, there is a relatively good tax for final products, but actually the private sector also raises concern. They say the taxation of components in tools are high, especially for students within the university who work on microelectronics. They say this is a big challenge. So they say, can we get some solution? Of course, you will get a solution. And by the way, this is one of our agendas that we discuss with the private sector. And several researches have been made, to get some experience from abroad. Rather than making a decision from our, conclusions and decisions, we said, let's learn from others. How do they tax for components? So it's a serious issue that should be addressed, and we are on the way. So I think, although we don't have a very specific segment for university students, but at least local, for the local investors or assemblers, we will have a solution, and we will have a different taxation for components that will incentivize them to assemble here. And the same solution definitely will apply for the university students. So if there will be any other requirement, I think we can discuss with the universities for their own, Maybe it's for laboratory and others. A different segment can also be considered, but from the private sector point of view and from the local manufacturing and assembly point of view, we are reviewing. And we believe that there is it's not, that we say it's not fair for local manufacturers and assemblers. So, we have done, as I said, many detailed studies that will be decided, in soon. So finally, on the way forward, I don't want to take another space. One thing is actually the overall, as I said, this document that was presented as a wrap-up is a very good start for us. We have to develop and we have to make it comprehensive. I mentioned some points earlier, but that's not enough. There are strategies that we have developed, and I'm sure from the four sectors I mentioned, they have their own strategies and policies that they have developed earlier. So let's incorporate. Within a short period of time, you cannot incorporate also deepening and making it comprehensive must be taken as one area of concern or way forward, because our challenge is, as I said, to digitize Ethiopia. So let's bring all the other resources that have been already developed into this workshop and expo. The focus definitely will be on 4 of them, and financing definitely. Let's include financing. It has its own version, as I said, from service and infrastructure. Let's see if there is even gap from infrastructure, but I push you to go to services. But let's take finance as one common theme, for all the 4. So let's take it that as one. And well, arrangement I suggest the way I have suggested, but as I mentioned earlier, ICT as an institution by its own. Of course, they represent private sector, but as an institution must involve diasporas by their own. They have to have their own representative in this work, and companies like you who have already gone into these details, and partners. Of course, it will not be just one platform. We'll start, with MCIT and ICT, then as I said, diasporas and the other actors will come. But finally, all the actors must also come together. So let's plan, let's develop an action plan that can run all those works that you mentioned and that we can also develop. And let's have a special team, one that coordinates. Of course, MCIT will be on top of it, but the other actors will be there. And then for finance, we'll have a dedicated team. For health, we can have a dedicated team composed of those all actors as mentioned. So let's develop the plan of how to, one, deepen, make it complete, and then operationalize as well. So we'll have a regular meeting as well, focusing on these 4 items. So thank you so much for this platform.
Fantastic. So thank you very much. I'll only say a few very, very brief words of wrap-up, conscious of time, and that is just to express 3 feelings that I'm left with after this morning's discussions and this dialogue. The first is I think a shared feeling of excitement coming out of this week. A feeling I think everyone shared, especially yesterday, walking in the expo hall when it was jam-packed full, especially with youth who are being exposed to so many exciting different initiatives going on and learning about the opportunities going forward. The second is to express a feeling of appreciation. Over the last several days, we've all had the opportunity to convene together thanks to the leadership of the ministry and also to our organizers, to Tshome, to Seyum, the whole organizing group and body in the process, but also especially appreciation to those moderators and to those panelists for bringing their diverse views in every single one of the panel discussions and in the side discussions. And maybe most of all, appreciation for the points of disagreement. Those who brought different perspectives, those who disagreed with this morning's summary presentation. That is exactly the point of this process, and that is to surface points of differing views so that we can go through a very productive dialogue together. And the third feeling I want to share is one of optimism, and the sense that we have that this is just the beginning, as His Excellency has pointed out, but there's a lot that can be achieved by building on the great collaborations that have already started here. So thank you again to everybody, and for a great week.
Thank you so much. This was really, truly a wonderful time that we had. Mr. Minister, we're going to have a group picture on stage with our presenters and moderators as well. So if you could give me a minute. Can you help with the chairs? Now, first we'll have a group picture here. We'll get rid of the chairs for you. So, if you could please wait. Don't go, please, yet. Let's take this moment together. And then while they are standing here, Ato Siyum and Ato Tshoma, I want you to join them, please. We're going to do this in order, in a manner of some order. And then next, I'm going to call on the presenters and moderators. All presenters, say, for example, Dr. Cordiero, and I don't know if there is anyone else, and the moderators like Pazion, Salamon, I don't know, anyone else as a moderator, please join them quickly. And then I'm going to ask sponsors and partners to join them, please. I don't know if this is too much for the camera. Is it okay, camera? Is it okay? Finish. Can you squeeze in, please, a little bit? Squeeze in so the camera can catch everybody. In the meantime, if anyone saw car keys laying on the floor or on the chair and you did something with them, please give them to me. They are Miraf's car keys. You have them? Awesome. And then, well, finally, that's everybody else. Who wants to join this picture? Whoever wants to join. If anybody else wants to join this picture, now it's open. We can be on the lower level, so we can get in the picture. Let's be on the lower level. It's better with them. This is history, yes. You can stand. You can stand. Yes, you can stand. We made history. This week, it's really an amazing time we had. So we want to keep it in our cameras, and EBS wants to do something with it, our media partner. So thank you all so much. A round of applause as you take the pictures. A round of applause. Thank you all so much. We will see you in 2018, another ICT Expo in this very auditorium. Your Excellencies and our moderators, thank you so much. And you have a wonderful time. Now we go for lunch upstairs to the mezzanine floor. We will have a high-level lunch. Then later, at 5 o'clock, we will meet at the Intercontinental Hotel. Is this Intercontinental or Intercontinental? It's the new Intercontinental Hotel, which is pretty much adjacent to Jupiter International Hotel or Radisson Blu Hotel on the side. So we will see you for the gala dinner at Intercontinental Addis, not Intercontinental, okay? Intercontinental Addis. Have a wonderful day and enjoy your lunch.